Okay, at this time, we want to invite Nancy Bush from the Disaster Management to come forward and present.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Is it on?
Your blue button on?
Good afternoon, or good morning.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you.
Has to be closer. Okay. All right, good morning. I'm Nancy Bush. I'm the Director of Clackamas County Disaster Management, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our budget. Our mission, of course, is to provide disaster planning, preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation, and medical examiner services to the Clackamas County community. Which includes, of course, all residents, any visitors, those passing through, those on 205. We made a really big group there. So as you can see, we are a small department. We have two lines of business. We have the disaster management, which is required by ORS 401. We have our medical examiner's office, which is required by ORS 146. Our department did go through Performance Clackamas and Managing for Results a little over a year ago, so we're about a year into it and been looking at our measures. We are going to be taking a look and doing some updating on how we collect measures and what we are going to be measuring. Our budget has been very tight for the past few years, like many others, but Performance Clackamas and MFR has changed the way we have looked at things and brought some good ideas to the forefront. Which includes working in zones in the county. We have a very large county, and trying to attack that for disaster management and what we would do during a large event like Cascadia was very difficult. So we worked with DTD and the roads department and looked at different islands that we think might pop up during a large event and working with each of those in their communities to make sure that they're prepared. We have facilities and places for sheltering, et cetera, in each of those zones. So that's something that came from our MFR planning. For the medical examiner's office, the process provided us tools for considering resources that will be needed in the future in relationship to how quickly the medical examiner caseload is increasing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. Our key results, we have accomplished or will accomplish 100% of our federally required disaster management plans that are to be up to date and approved. Our emergency operations plan was just recently promulgated by the Board of County Commissioners on March 30th, as well as other required plans that we have. We are currently working on our wildfire protection plan, which is actually has to be updated in 2018, so it takes us a year and a half to get things done. So we're working on that. We are also working on an evacuation plan for Mount Hood for a couple reasons. One of them is wildland fire, and the other one, of course, is Mount Hood, which is beautiful, but it is not a sleeping volcano. It is very, very active, actually. We have done 100% of our required disaster management exercises and also worked, of course, our actual events as required. We had 5 joint military exercises over this past year. We also did Cascadia Rising, which was an international exercise. And we also had several real events over the winter, though we did not get a declaration, a federal declaration. We had a lot of events locally and we all over the state, and we certainly were not immune to that. Each of these events and exercises requires an after-action report. We have to do after-action reports for 100% of those events, which we have done. And from those, we have, of course, after-action items that we have to accomplish. And one of the things we do have in MFR that we're going to accomplish at least 85 to 95% of those. And one of the things we have in here was we rolled out the employee, or we are rolling out the employee well-being check to all county employees. And that was something that was in an after-action report that we had from a previous exercise. Our total line of business budget is a little over $2.7 million. We get a little bit over 1 million from the general fund. Our other sources of revenue is federal grants, and I'd like to tell you, or make sure you understand that those are pass-through dollars. Those are dollars that do not come to us. So that 982,200 actually goes to local jurisdictions. But because we have the agreement with the jurisdiction, it has to go on our budget, but we do not benefit from that directly here at the county. The Emergency Management Performance Grant, we are estimating $100,000. That particular grant has been shrinking in recent years. We do know that it was just announced we are going to get dollars from EMPG this year, but again, I'm anticipating $100,000 or not much more, if any more. At our high, we were at about $530,000 with that particular grant, and we're down to an estimated $100,000, which really has put a dent in our budget, our operational budget. Our beginning balance, $636,000. And that again is a grant that, is a balance that has been working its way down over the past few years. As I've come to this group several years in a row, that just keeps shrinking because that's how we're balancing our budget and keeping services at the rate that they are right now. Our fund balance is going to be, or should be, around $286,390. We do have $100,000 in there to use if our EMPG dollars do not come through. One of the things I do want to say about the EMPG dollars is that the state can actually keep all of it if they want to. They have not done that in the past, but they've been keeping more and more. I don't anticipate that happening. I do think now that we know for sure, it was just announced I think Thursday or Friday of last week that the EMPG was coming to the states. But I wanted to make sure I had that in there in case it didn't come through. And then we have the contingency if there's a disaster in the county, which will assist in staff overtime and supplies for Emergency Operations Center. Again, the contingency has been shrinking over the past few years. And just to point out here that that is something that we've been relying on if we have events, and as that goes away, the only other place we'll have to go is to the county administration to ask for any dollars for any time we have an event. We do not have a reserves budget, and so the medical examiner's office in 16-17 projected 4% of the on-scene investigations with associated interviews and investigations will have quality assurance reviews. Those reviews are from industry standards, so that we want to make sure that we're doing all of our death investigations according to industry standards. And our chief deputy medical examiner goes out on 4% of calls to make sure that that is happening. And they should be hitting 95% of those standards. We want them to hit 100%, but when you go through MFR, they're like, 100% is really hard to hit all the time, so we did bring it down to 95. But we have been watching that very closely this year. The projected number of medical examiner cases is 1075, which is a 12% increase over last year, which is significant. We have not had that kind of a jump and an increase in caseload in several years. So we'll be watching that closely. If that continues to grow at 12%, we would have to have some staff. That's 24/7 staff, and we will have to have at least another staff member in the next 1 or 2 years if that does continue to grow that way. The total line of business budget is $880,000. The general fund support is $853,928, and they also have a beginning balance of almost $27,000. Again, the fund balance, there is no fund balance or contingency any longer. So this particular program too will be looking for a few more dollars next year, not as significant as the disaster management program. But some changes and issues. The caseload is increasing, like I said, from about 12% from last year. We will have to watch that trend very closely. The cost of staff and supplies is increasing, and as if there's no more beginning balance to help with those services, then, we'll probably be looking for more dollars in 18-19. We also have an anticipated retirement benefit payout that is going to hit our budget significantly, probably in 18, early 19. I have POA staff. We do have a staff who has submitted their intention to retire. So we're looking at that and what that payout is going to be. The department-wide budget overview. The total department budget is a little over $3.6 million. The total general revenue support is $1.874 million, which is 52% of our budget. The federal grants, 30% of our budget, but then again, I want to remind you that that is mostly pass-through dollars. About $1 million of that is pass-through dollars. And our beginning balance is 18% of our budget. As in most of the other departments, our personnel costs are our largest budgeted item at 45.8%. Materials and services is 21.2%, and our cost allocation is almost 7% of our budget. The department overview of the facilities and capital projects fund, which this is split between CCOM and disaster management. We had a video system, surveillance system upgrade for $40,000, a direct digital controls replacement for $41,550, for a total of $81,550. And we are budgeting a capital project, a building security system, which is our door lock release system, for around $35,000. Our current system is not working well. If you come and visit our building, we may have to push the button several times to get you in the building. And we do need a secure facility, not only for us, but for CCOM. And so we are looking at getting that replaced as well. Our financial trends. So a couple of comments here. One of the questions that was asked by the committee was, how much would we need to keep our services at the current level? And I did all of the math, and we're looking at around $550,000 in order to keep services where they are. We're at the point now in the next year or so, if we don't receive more funding, if we don't find more funding, that the only other place to cut is staff. So that trend of seeing grants go down for disaster management and also for Homeland Security is definitely taking its toll. The beginning balance, again, has been used to offset that, and now the beginning balance is going to be down to, around $250,000 in the next year. This year, we used almost $400,000 out of beginning balance, and we also cut several other things like planning out of our budget in order to pull the budget together this year. Our expenditure trends, personnel and benefits cost continue to rise, and as you've already heard a couple of more times today. And again, our medical examiner's caseload, which is increasing rapidly, which is causing a projected need for new staff. We've had 11 FTE. We lost, I think, a staff in 2010, and we've had 11 since that time. And then we did talk about the funding results. The $35,000 is from the PLP funding results. That's going to be carried over into the first of next year because we're working with 2 other departments to make sure that that is secure and done. And there's been a delay there. That's what I have for you today. I hope I cut you up a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. I have a quick question on your medical examiner,
Yes.
trends and increases. Have you tracked on what some of those factors are? Is it an aging population, for example? We've got a growing
there is a population
in the county,
growth, and I did talk to our medical examiners about that, but we are seeing higher increase in drug deaths. Homicides are up a little bit, and suicides are also up. But I think a lot of it is really, they said most of it they're seeing in the drug death category.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Oh,
That was my question too. I was wondering.
yeah, thank you.
for asking that.
Did you have a question? No. Oh, okay. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, Nancy, appreciate all the good work you do, and this question or comment might actually be more for administration than your department. And I know you've actually spoke to this actually about your declining beginning balance.
Yes, sir.
And I recognize that, and tax assessor just got done with his. I didn't raise this as an issue, but he had zero beginning balance, and actually he kind of overspent a little bit, so he's not really relying upon um, that beginning balance is, obviously we're gonna fill that, and we have, and we made him whole at the end and so on. So what I wanted to point out, again, an exercise for discussion later on this afternoon, is that your beginning balance in reality has been more than double the general fund contribution. So in essence, it's kind of been serving, so to speak, not a criticism, just an observation, somewhere as a double reserve. We're relying upon the reserves policy we have in your general fund support primarily. But our policy is 5% contingency, 10% reserve. And like the tax assessor model, we made them whole in the end. But I just want to point out that the 15, 16, 14, 15, 16, 17, each of those years, there's a pretty sizable beginning balance. And I guess I just want to convey that I think that we ought to have some security that will be there to make sure you're whole at the end of the year. But,
Yes.
that those monies, because you're primarily general fund support mostly,
Yes.
that it is there, and it's almost a double reserve in essence if we look at all the general fund, especially the general fund supported departments. I understand some of the citations you made during your presentation, and I listened very carefully to that. But in general, I think that's something we ought to just keep an eye on.
I agree, and I also want to just mention too, some of those dollars too, because we have federal funding. For example, we have some federal funding this year for the event that happened in 2015 in December, and we have to continue to move that forward because those federal funds come. However, we can't spend them like we're doing a buyout. It takes almost 3 years to do a buyout. So part of what you're seeing, not all of it, but part of what you're seeing are mitigation dollars that have been moved forward. So not all of it is contingency.
It's in the contingency.
Yeah, and if I may, I wouldn't really regard it as a sort of double reserve. What it is funds from prior years that have not been expended, and in disaster management in particular, reliance on federal funds that are diminishing over time, being a part of the situation, in much the same way we talked about the juvenile department and the drawdown of the trust fund. What we're talking about here is, in order to maintain current maintenance level, we are drawing down on fund balance in order to make ends meet. So I would expect, as we're looking at future budget years, the disaster management program will become even more reliant on the general fund, and we may be talking with the board or the budget committee in future years about policy level proposals in order to augment the ability of the department to maintain its capacity to provide the services it provides.
Yeah, my comment, if you look at like last year's exercise, the aggregate amount of all those beginning balances or carryovers was pretty sizable. It was actually it was far more than our actual reserves policy and contingency combined. And my point is that I understand all those justifications, but it is, in a sense, if you're looking at having reserves, there is a lot more reserves there, however they're labeled, than we actually program for for the policy of reserves and contingencies. That's my point.
So my point is the money really isn't there for this coming year. It's expected to be spent. It's never been budgeted in reserve. So the reason being is that the department relies on it to be able to provide services. And so were we to sort of have siphoned it off in some particular way last year, they'd be in a world of hurt going into this coming year. They wouldn't be able to make ends meet.
Just an associated comment. I mean, we've seen several budgets come before us where they're winding down their reserves. And basically, this pings one of my budget rules, is that you're using one-time monies, which are carryover amounts, to fund ongoing obligations like staff and contracts with other entities. So that bill is going to come due probably next year. So, I mean, this is like a transition. The budget we're working on, it's a transition year, but the tab's going to have to be paid or services cut in a future year, probably next year, in my
And
book.
you'll recall in my budget message, I made this very point about some of these funds experiencing this condition, so, yeah. Okay.
Ed, do you have a question?
This door you're replacing, where is that at?
There's actually, we're not replacing a door, we're replacing a door system, and it's in our building, which is, we share with CCOM, which is down by the jail.
Well, CCOM's building then,
Yeah, we share a building with CCOM.
and but it's in your budget.
That's true.
Can you tell us why?
Well, we did get funding from the committee to do a upgrade in our security for our building, and so that came from the general fund.
And then the other question, deputy MEs, where are they located?
They are located in Clackamas, and with the Multnomah County's deputy, their medical examiners, and with the state medical examiner, and it's over by Costco.
Is it in with OSP too?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I just wondered if they were still there. Thank you.
They are still there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, seeing none, we'd like to thank you for coming and presenting.